phone from the other side. It was the kind of day that felt like it had been dragged out of time itself, gray clouds blocking any trace of sunlight, the kind of air that makes you want to wrap up in a blanket and forget the world outside. But I was walking, not because I wanted to, but because it felt like something I needed to do. I don't know why I was out there, down that alley, when it caught my eye. The phone. A cheap, old model, one of those clunky bricks from the early 2000s, partially buried beneath a pile of leaves. It didn't belong in the alley, or in that part of town for that matter. I could feel it from the second I spotted it, the weird pull. I bent down, brushing away the dead leaves, and picked it up. The screen was cracked, the battery nearly dead, but the weirdest thing was how the phone felt, like it was waiting for someone. I don't know what I expected, but as soon as I pressed the power button, the thing buzzed to life. The display was static for a second, then blinked, and there it was, an incoming call. The number was a jumble of digits I didn't recognize. Something twisted in my gut, a feeling that told me I should have left it there, in the dirt, to rot along with the rest of the junk. But I didn't. I answered. "Hello?" I said, voice barely above a whisper. The sound of static greeted me, and then, a voice. Low, calm. Too familiar. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" I froze. The voice, God, the voice, it wasn't someone I knew, but it felt like it belonged to someone I'd known forever. Something about the tone made my pulse quicken. "Who's this?" I asked, my throat tightening. "I know you think you've forgotten," the voice continued, "but you haven't. You can't. You know what you've done." I felt a chill creeping up my spine, but at the same time I was curious. Why did it feel like it knew me? Like it knew everything about me? My hand was trembling now, clutching the phone, my heart thudding in my chest. "What do you mean? I don't know you. I don't know who you are." The voice chuckled, a sound that seemed far too cold for a human laugh. "You will. You'll remember soon enough." Then the call cut out. No warning. Just the sudden silence, leaving me staring at the cracked screen, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My mind raced. Was it some kind of prank? No way, this felt wrong. I didn't know what kind of wrong, but I knew it wasn't just a joke. I should have thrown the phone away right then, but something kept me glued to it. Maybe it was that nagging curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that the voice had felt too real, too personal. Or maybe it was just that damn phone, its broken screen almost begging to be answered again. I started walking home, my fingers still gripping the device, even though my head told me to get rid of it. When I reached my apartment, the silence in the hallway felt thick, like the air had been holding its breath. I stepped inside, slammed the door behind me, and tossed the phone onto the couch. But it wasn't over. I should have known it wouldn't be. Not long after I sat down, it rang again. This time, I didn't answer immediately. I stared at the phone, my finger hovering above the screen. The same number. The same voice. What was happening? Who could know me like that? I finally answered. "You're not getting it," the voice said, calm as ever, as though nothing was wrong. "You can't run from this. Not anymore." I stood up, pacing. "What do you mean I can't run? From what? Who the hell are you?" "You can't escape time," the voice said, and this time, it sent a shiver through me. "You're stuck in it. And we're all waiting for you." I slammed the phone down on the table, heart racing. I wanted to scream. To break something. But I was frozen. Something about what the voice said, it felt like a warning, a promise, and a threat all at once. But the worst part? I couldn't shake the feeling that the voice was right. That something had already started. Something had been set into motion. The apartment felt smaller, colder. The shadows in the corners seemed to reach for me, crawling along the walls. I looked at the phone, but I didn't dare pick it up. What was the point? It was already too late, wasn't it? But as if the phone had a life of its own, it buzzed once more. This time, I hesitated. Then I picked it up again. "I told you," the voice said, softer now, almost sympathetic. "You never had a choice. You've already lived this, haven't you? It's just not over yet." I felt my heart drop into my stomach. The idea that someone, could know my life, could know things about me, things I didn't even remember, that made my mind spin. Had I really lived this before? Was this even real? The voice continued, like it was reading me, piece by piece. "It's not the first time you found the phone, is it? And it won't be the last." I almost threw it out the window right then and there, but I couldn't. It was like the phone was a tether, pulling me in, and I was helpless. I wanted to stop. I wanted to hang up, to forget, but the voice kept coming. It was like it knew me. Knew the darkest corners of me. The things I had forgotten, the memories that haunted me. And just before the call ended, I heard it again. "You're not the first, you know. There's been others before you. And there will be others after. Time is never really linear, you see? It loops. And you're stuck in it. All of us are." The call dropped. I stared at the phone in my hand, too terrified to move, too confused to think clearly. What had just happened? Was it all real? Or was I losing my mind? I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen. But eventually, I felt it again, the pull. Something was calling me. And deep down, I knew it was only just beginning. The silence that followed was suffocating, like the apartment had somehow closed in around me. The air felt heavy, every breath an effort. I couldn't stop thinking about the voice, about the things it said. The words echoed in my mind, twisting, taking on new meanings with every passing second. Time wasn't linear. Time loops. It made no sense, yet it made all the sense in the world. And then there was the phone, still sitting there on the table, just waiting. I didn't want to touch it, didn't want to hear that voice again. But I couldn't resist. Something told me I had no choice. I picked it up, heart hammering in my chest. This time, the voice wasn't calm. It was urgent, desperate. "You've got to stop this," it said, as if it were pleading. "You don't understand. You don't realize what you've done." I clenched my teeth, the words cutting through me like knives. "I haven't done anything. Who are you? What do you want from me?" The voice didn't answer immediately. There was a long pause, one that felt like it lasted years, stretching out the seconds until I thought I might go mad. Then, almost in a whisper, it spoke again. "You're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be alive." I recoiled as if I'd been slapped, the phone slipping from my fingers for a moment. The words stung, cutting into me in a way I couldn't explain. "What the hell do you mean? I'm not supposed to be alive? What is this? What game are you playing?" The voice seemed to hesitate, like it was calculating its next move. "No game. No tricks. You should never have found the phone. It wasn't meant for you. But now that you've taken it, you're caught in the cycle. It's not just your past you need to worry about, it's your future. We all have one. And you've broken it." I was shaking now. The cold from the apartment had crept into my bones, and I felt it, a deep, gnawing fear that I couldn't escape. My thoughts were tangled, my mind racing. What do you mean? What's broken? How do I fix it? There was a long, tense silence, then the voice returned, softer this time, as if it were speaking to someone who was already lost. "There's no fixing it. There's only waiting." I didn't know what to do with that. My mind was spinning. I needed answers, needed to know what was going on. But the more I tried to piece things together, the more they seemed to slip away, like water through my fingers. The call ended abruptly, leaving me standing there with nothing but the phone and the hollow, unsettling feeling of dread. For the next few hours, I couldn't bring myself to move. I paced the apartment, waiting, listening for the next ring. The voice kept pulling at me, calling me back. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was like an obsession, an invisible thread tying me to something I didn't understand. The more I resisted, the harder it pulled. Finally, just as I was starting to think maybe I could put it out of my mind, the phone rang again. I picked it up without hesitation this time. "You don't get it, do you?" the voice said, its tone sharper now. "You think you can just walk away from this. But there's no escape. There never was. I was done. I couldn't take it anymore. What do you want from me?" I yelled into the phone, my voice cracking. "I just want to know." The voice paused, and I could feel the weight of its words before they even came. "You want to know the truth? The truth is, you're already dead." I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My heart stopped. It didn't make sense. I couldn't process it. But the voice kept talking, explaining something I couldn't follow. "You died once before, you see. That's the thing about time. It doesn't always move forward. Sometimes, it just repeats. It loops. And you're stuck in it. You were never supposed to come back. But you did." I couldn't breathe. My pulse pounded in my ears as I tried to make sense of it. The voice continued, its words slowing down, like it was savoring the moment. "The phone is a bridge. It's not just an object. It's a key. And now it's yours. Every time you pick it up, you're going deeper. You're slipping through the cracks, and soon you won't know what's real anymore." My thoughts were spinning in every direction. Could this be true? Could I be dead? My mind rejected the idea, but something deep down inside me, the same gut feeling that told me to pick up the phone in the first place, whispered that maybe, just maybe, there was something to it. That voice had said things no one could have known. And it felt real, more real than anything in my life ever had. "I'm not dead," I managed to say, voice shaking. "I'm here. I'm still here." The voice let out a long, soft sigh. "That's what you think." And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the call ended. Again, no warning. Just the click of a disconnected line, leaving me in silence, wondering if the entire conversation had been a dream. I didn't move for what felt like hours. The weight of what had been said was too much, pressing down on me. But in the back of my mind, something gnawed at me, there had to be more. The phone wasn't just calling me, it was shaping me, pulling me down a path I couldn't see. And deep down, I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to be able to escape. Not this time. The phone buzzed again, its screen lighting up in the darkness of the room. I reached for it, knowing full well that answering it meant diving deeper into a nightmare that had no end. The phone rang again. It was impossible to ignore. Even as my hand hovered over it, I knew that this would be the moment. There would be no turning back. Not now. There was no escape. But still, I answered. "You're still here," the voice said, this time almost a whisper, laced with something darker, more knowing. "You shouldn't be. You can't keep doing this. You don't understand what you're messing with." I tried to steady my breath, but it came in quick, shallow gasps. "What do you mean? What is it that I'm messing with?" I faltered, feeling stupid. What could I say? What was this? Was this even happening? Or was I losing my mind? The voice sighed, long and heavy. "Time is a fragile thing. A broken thing. And when you break it, you don't just ruin the past. You erase the future." I could feel the weight of the words, suffocating me. But I didn't break anything. I wanted to shout, but it was more of a whimper. I sounded pathetic. I just found the phone. I didn't know. I didn't ask for this. The voice chuckled, low and hollow, like the sound of something decaying in the dark. No one ever asks for it. But here you are, caught between the cracks, playing your part. A rush of images hit me then, disjointed fragments of memories that weren't mine. I saw faces, places, events that felt familiar, yet alien. Was this the past, or was this the future? I couldn't tell. The blur between what I had lived and what I was supposed to live was thinning, disintegrating. And I couldn't stop it. My hand trembled as I held the phone tighter, gripping it like a lifeline. I don't know what you want from me, I whispered. You want answers, it said softly, almost pityingly. But the truth is, you're already gone. You're just too afraid to realize it. I closed my eyes, fighting the surge of panic threatening to drown me. The voice was right, in a way. I felt it, something was wrong, off kilter. My reality was unraveling, piece by piece. Each conversation, each call from the phone, was pulling me further from the world I knew. It felt like a warning, like a trap closing in around me. What do I do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. How do I fix it? Please. Just tell me how to fix it. There was a long pause. Then, the voice replied, its tone soft but final. There's nothing to fix, because you can't go back. You can only move forward. And when you do, you'll see. You'll finally see what's been staring at you all along. I felt a chill run through me, icy fingers creeping up my spine. What do you mean? What's been staring at me? The voice's laughter echoed in my mind again, dark and ominous. You've always known, deep down. It was never about the phone. It was never about the past or the future. It was always about you. About what you've become. I didn't understand, and I hated that I didn't. I hated the helplessness that was creeping into my bones. But before I could say anything else, the call ended. I dropped the phone onto the table, letting it fall with a hollow thud. The silence that filled the room was deafening. The air was thick, as if the walls were closing in on me. I stood there, frozen, staring at the screen. The next call was inevitable. I could feel it in my gut. And then it rang again. I didn't pick it up immediately. I just stared at it, my mind a mess of racing thoughts. Each ring felt like a drumbeat in my chest, urging me forward, toward something I couldn't see. Something I wasn't ready for. But I couldn't escape. I couldn't run anymore. When I finally did answer, the voice was different. Not just different in tone, but different in substance. You're almost there, it said, but this time, there was something, softer. Almost like a whisper of something kind. I was barely able to choke out the words. Where? Where am I supposed to go? You're not going anywhere, the voice said. You're already here. You just haven't seen it yet. The phone didn't bring you back. It was never about coming back. It's always been about accepting. Accepting what? I asked, confused, desperate to understand. What am I supposed to accept? There was a long, heavy pause. Then it came, the words that I had been dreading to hear. The truth about you, the voice whispered. That you've been dead all along. I felt my heart stop, and for a moment, everything went dark. My body froze, caught in some weird limbo. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. How could this be? How could this be happening? The voice continued, its tone calm now, almost detached. You didn't die in some big, dramatic way. No, your death was quiet, gradual. You slipped away, piece by piece, until one day, there was nothing left of you but a shell, walking through the motions. And now, you're trapped here, in the space between. The phone is just the bridge. It's not what brought you back. It's what keeps you here. I could barely comprehend it, but the dread, the suffocating reality of it, pressed down on me with such force that I could hardly breathe. Why? I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. The voice let out a soft sigh. Because you had to see. You had to understand that your life, your future, it was never yours to control. And now, you're stuck in the loop. Forever. I closed my eyes. The tears came without warning, hot and stinging as they ran down my face. Everything I thought I knew, everything I thought I understood, was falling apart. The world felt unreal, distant, like a dream I couldn't wake up from. And just as I thought I was about to lose myself entirely, the call ended. The silence was absolute. I didn't move. I couldn't. The phone lay there, still and silent in my hand, the weight of its message pressing down on me like a ton of bricks. And yet, in the quiet, there was one thought that clung to my mind. What if I wasn't just trapped in time? What if I was trapped in someone else's life? The next few days felt like a fog, my senses dulled and distant, as though I were watching life from the wrong side of a thick glass window. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything around me, every sound, every motion, was wrong. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull myself back into the present. It felt like I was already a ghost, wandering through my own existence, a life that didn't seem to belong to me anymore. I kept the phone. It was hard to explain why. I should have thrown it away, burned it, smashed it into pieces until there was nothing left. But instead, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Each time I looked at it, the screen flickering with that eerie glow, I felt an unspoken pull, something deeper than curiosity. It was like the phone had become a part of me, a tether to a past I didn't remember and a future I wasn't sure I wanted to see. The call stopped for a while, and for a moment, I allowed myself to breathe. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had been happening, whatever dark force had been working its way into my life, had given up. I told myself that it was just a glitch, some twisted coincidence, and I was finally free. But then, on the third night after the last call, the phone rang again. It wasn't a soft vibration, nor was it a regular, insistent ringing. No. This time, it was louder. Sharper. Each ring struck me like a hammer against my skull, pulling me back into the nightmare, against my will. I knew what it meant. I could feel it in my bones. This call, unlike all the others, wasn't a warning. It was a final summons. I hesitated before picking it up, my hand shaking, sweat beading at the back of my neck. When I finally answered, the voice was different, closer, more intimate, almost like it was coming from inside my own mind. You don't have much time left, it said, and I could hear the faintest hint of something like regret in its tone. You've been avoiding it, haven't you? You think you can outrun it. What are you talking about? My voice came out strangled, as if the words were stuck in my throat. I haven't been avoiding anything. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But nothing came out the way I wanted it to. You can feel it now, can't you? The voice continued, slow and deliberate. The change. The pull. The feeling that something is wrong. That's me. That's what I am. I am the part of you that you never knew existed, the part you tried to bury. But you can't bury it anymore. It's awake. And it's coming for you. I swallowed hard, trying to hold back the terror that clawed its way up my throat. I don't know what you mean. I don't even understand what's happening. The voice paused, almost as if it were considering me, weighing me. Then it spoke again, softer now, but somehow more sinister. Do you remember the accident? It asked. The question hit me like a slap. My heart skipped a beat, and I was plunged back into a memory I didn't even recognize, but I knew it was mine. A dark, rainy night. A flash of headlights. The screech of tires. The sound of glass shattering. Blood. The voice continued, its words crawling through my skull like a parasite. You don't remember, do you? You've buried it so deep that even you don't recognize what you've done. But you know now. Don't you? The walls seemed to close in around me, the air thick and suffocating. I could feel my pulse in my temples, racing, pounding. That memory, my memory, had been there all along, just beneath the surface, waiting. But I didn't want to know. I didn't want to remember. I didn't do anything, I whispered, though I wasn't even sure if I was speaking to the phone or to myself. I didn't mean to. The voice responded, its tone colder now, almost clinical. You didn't mean to. But you did. And now, you're paying the price. But you're not the only one who's paying, are you? You did something to someone, didn't you? And now, they're waiting for you. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was drowning in the weight of my own guilt, but I didn't know what I had done. There was no memory of it, no moment where I could say, yes, I remember now. I did this thing. And yet, it felt real. Like I had stolen something, broken something, something that couldn't be fixed. Who is it? Who's waiting for me? I asked, my voice barely audible, trembling with fear. The voice on the other end was silent for a moment. Then it whispered, you'll know soon enough. The call ended with a click that echoed in my head. The air around me was still, but the sense of dread was overwhelming, crawling under my skin like 1,000 insects. Something was coming. I could feel it. I couldn't outrun it. The phone stayed silent for the rest of the night, but I knew it wouldn't be long before it rang again. The truth, the real truth, was out there, just beyond my reach. And the more I tried to ignore it, the closer it got. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. My mind was foggy, but I still had this terrible sense that I was being watched. I couldn't go outside without feeling the weight of eyes on me, couldn't walk down the street without hearing whispers just beyond the edge of hearing. It was as if the world itself had shifted, and I was standing in the middle of it, completely exposed. But nothing was more terrifying than the feeling that the phone was still calling to me. I knew it wasn't over. It couldn't be over, not yet. There was no escaping the truth, no matter how hard I tried to outrun it. The last call was inevitable. And when it came, I would be ready for it. But would I be ready for what I would find on the other side? The final call came 2 days later. I had been waiting for it, but that didn't make it any easier. It felt like the entire world had grown quiet in anticipation, as though everything around me was holding its breath, waiting for something inevitable to unfold. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone, the same cold weight pressing against my chest that had been with me ever since the first call. It was a different kind of fear now, one that was far more familiar than it should have been. I had been expecting this moment, but I wasn't prepared for what would follow. Are you ready? The voice was still distant, but somehow sharper this time. It felt as though it wasn't coming from the phone anymore, but from inside my head. A quiet hum, like the ticking of an ancient clock, filled the background. I didn't answer at first. I couldn't. What could I say? What was left to say? I already knew what was coming, and yet my mind desperately grasped at any shred of hope, any excuse to delay the inevitable. I asked if you're ready, the voice repeated. It wasn't angry, but it was insistent, like a final warning before the door slammed shut. You think you can outrun it. You think you can hide from what you've done. But you can't. There's nowhere to run anymore. Do you understand that? I closed my eyes, my breath shallow. I thought of the accident, the memory that had been creeping up on me, just out of reach. The crash. The blood. The scream that echoed in the night. A scream that wasn't mine. I tried to push it down again. To block it out, but it was no use. The voice was right. There was no more running. The truth was waiting for me, waiting to be uncovered, and I was no longer strong enough to ignore it. You're the reason they're waiting, the voice continued, colder now. The one you hurt. The one you took from. It's time for you to face it. You can't hide anymore. You never could. Who? I choked out, barely able to speak. Who are you? What do you want from me? The voice didn't answer immediately. Instead, there was a long pause, like it was letting my question linger in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. Then, the voice whispered again, just loud enough for me to hear, like it was speaking directly into my soul. I'm the one you left behind. It hit me like a sledgehammer, a flash of realization that cracked my chest open. The truth I had been running from for so long, the truth that had been buried under layers of guilt, fear, and denial, finally came flooding in. It wasn't just the accident. It wasn't just the blood or the screams. I hadn't been the only one in the car that night. There had been someone else. Someone I'd forgotten. Someone I couldn't remember, someone I had lost, and in losing them, I had lost a part of myself. The phone clicked, and I was left alone in the silence, staring at the screen, as if I could will the truth to change, to make sense of it all. The weight in my chest didn't lift, but instead grew heavier, suffocating me. The truth was there, staring me in the face, undeniable. The person I had forgotten was gone, and they were angry. I sat there for what felt like hours, unsure of what to do. The phone was silent now, but it hadn't finished with me yet. I could feel it. Like a door waiting to be opened, it was waiting for me to come back. I couldn't run anymore. The truth had claimed me, and it would not let me go. There was no redemption. No second chance. There was only the memory of what I had done, and the voice that would haunt me until the end of my days. As I stood up, the air around me seemed to ripple, the shadows in the room stretching and curling in a way that didn't feel natural. I wasn't sure if it was just my mind playing tricks on me, or if something else was happening, something beyond the grasp of my understanding. But I knew one thing for certain, the past was not done with me. It was still alive, still breathing, and it would never let me forget. I looked at the phone one last time. The screen remained dark. But I knew, deep down, that it was only a matter of time before it rang again. And when it did, I would be ready. Because there was no escaping this. The past always catches up. And when it does, it demands a price.